Hey everybody, welcome to November 19th's MakerDAO community call. It's the first community call in the post MCD era of Maker. I think this is actually a really special time for the entire community. I think everybody that's been working on this, everybody that's been like just immersed in Maker for like the last few years in our community, like this has been a long time coming, and some really exciting stuff happened yesterday. As many of you might have heard, MCD launched yesterday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1600 GMT. And today's community call, we're going to be doing what we usually do, which is we go over basically the week in the MakerDAO universe. We go through everything from governance, partnerships, integrations, grants. We go through highlights from the community, like some developer creations, cool articles that I've seen, notable threads, videos, etc. So I spend a few hours every week. I try to curate a bunch of cool stuff and all the most notable stuff, and I share it with you guys here in this call. And also we have guests pretty often on the call nowadays, which has been really great. And so today we do have two guests. They're two of the big heads in the Maker Foundation. We have Wouter, our head of engineering, and we have Mariano Conti, our head of smart contracts, in the call. And I'll actually pass it over to them for the first half of the call, and we're going to talk a bit about the deployment and like how migration is going so far. And so, Wouter, you wanna grab the mic?
Yes, thank you, David. We even have a presentation prepared. So, Mariano, can you share your screen?
Yes, I'm on that. Give me one sec. I can deploy MCD, but I cannot find. Okay, here we are.
Everyone has their own specific talents.
Yeah. Okay. So please tell me if you can see this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could see it.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so as David mentioned, we want to take the opportunity of MCD launch to talk about it and to have a look at the next steps. Obviously, we're very happy with the way that the launch went. We believe it was a very successful launch, and yeah, this for multiple reasons, right? So, first thing is the way that we launched the system. Discussions we had with the community about the system parameters, the risk parameters, the collateral that should be included, and then the way that the system was activated with the community vote. So for us, that it was definitely first to deploy and launch a system of this size and complexity, and then have this active community involvement. So that we see as a big win, and we're very happy that it went the way it went. One thing that we that actually our great integrations team that is really coordinating with our integration partners, the many dApps and services that integrate with single collateral Dai. All these partners, they needed to do their bit of the work to upgrade, and we've put quite some effort in coordinating this with them, organizing calls months really before the launch, and making sure that they had the information that was necessary to prepare plans on their side. And we've received some wonderful feedback about people feeling that the launch was well coordinated with our partners. So that too was really something that we saw as a challenge, and that I think went pretty great. Obviously, the biggest success is the strengths of the actual system that we deployed. So MCD multi-collateral Dai, or since Mariano is on the call, I should say much cooler Dai. really has a bunch of new things that it brings. And I think Much Cooler Dai is probably a better name, because one of the things that we discussed before that is that multi-collateral Dai is probably a little bit of a misnomer. It was really conceived like this system with, as the biggest difference between single and multi-collateral Dai, the fact that we would have multiple types of collateral. Personally, I believe that the launch of multi-collateral Dai is actually more about the other features, and that the experimentation with multiple types of collateral, or the multi-collateral Dai enables that, will actually, that still needs to happen, right? So the number one feature that we like to brag with is the DSR feature. So we already have a bunch of Dai locked in the DSR feature, in the DSR module, and people are receiving 2% at this moment per year on the Dai that they lock into the module. And this is really great to see this in action, because we've been looking forward to this enormously. Then obviously it does come with multiple collateral types. So there was a lot of discussion in the community whether this was actually a good idea and which collateral type should be included. And personally, I'm really happy with the result that we ended up with, which is that the bulk of the collateral really is the same as in single collateral Dai. Multi-collateral Dai is still largely backed by ETH with the same risk parameters, and we just enabled this new feature to add a second collateral type, and the community selected BAT, and we have a really conservative debt ceiling there. So it is the perfect setup for us to start experimenting with this, learn what this means, and at the same time, not in one go take an enormous amount of risk because of all the new mechanisms that this involves. The other one is Oracle's V2. So this too was it was a really big undertaking. We've been running our Oracle's V1 infrastructure since quite some time now. I had built up quite a good reputation for it, but we all know that oracles are a really difficult problem, and that we're still improving on the solution. And the Oracle V2 infrastructure is much more cost efficient. It is much more scalable, and it's much more performant than the first version. So this is one that, once again, and this is a recurring theme, right? MCD really is the start of a lot of experiments that we can now dig into, and Oracle V2 is a perfect example of that. Another difference is the auctions that we now included in the system. So in single collateral Dai, whenever we need to, for example, sell collateral when a CDP is liquidated, then we use the Oasis smart contracts. And although Oasis is a very good DEX with good liquidity overall, it's actually much better to have auctions, so that it is not like hard coded on which market we're selling or buying. This is now totally independent and is controlled by the market makers that bid on the auctions. So that too is a great improvement. We also have our security roadmap that we went through. So we've worked on formal verification of the contracts. It's really first time that a system of this scale and this complexity was formally verified to the extent that we did, and that too was something that was a big step forward. And then for me personally, as head of engineering, probably the most important thing about MCD, and that's something that isn't brought up too often, but for me, the most important thing is that we've put this thing out in the wild now, and we can start battle testing this completely new code base, because this always, the longer you wait and the more the code base grows, and the more you wait until everything is perfect, the bigger actually the risk is, the risk that is building up, because code cannot be made like foolproof purely in theory. You really have to deploy it, put it out there in the wild, and see how the new system will behave. And that's now the process that we can start, and that's for me really important for the risk and the security of the system. And then one thing we'll talk more about at length today is the fact that MCD really is the next step towards a road, or in a road towards more decentralization. So we've always devised our strategy of gradual decentralization, thinking about the many problems that you need to solve to have full decentralization, and adding bits and pieces along the way. And MCD really is a big step in that direction, and we'll talk a bit more about why we think that is. But before we do that, we just want to point out that we're 24 hours in. We already have more than 7 million multi-collateral Dai. I believe there is a betting market going on with the question if we'll reach 10 million by November 21st. So I'm very curious to see what that number will be in 2 days, and I think we will definitely beat the odds, and yeah, that's a great thing to look forward to. This is only one statistic. Mariano has, in his spare time when he wasn't programming and verifying and deploying MCD, in the 5 minutes that he still had of free time, he has actually developed a dashboard with a lot of statistics. So yeah, we want to have a look at that and see what the numbers are that we already have in the system 1 day after the deployment or activation.
Okay, so let me talk. First off, just hi everybody. Quick second, I want to show you the actual transaction that cast a spell to activate MCD. This is the cast, and it was done by a member of the community, Andrew Redden from Groundhog Pay, and it came from this address, and we can actually verify this because he gave us signature saying I activated Much Cooler Dai, and his Twitter handle, it is signed with the exact same address, right? And we can verify this cryptographically. So congrats, Andrew. And yeah, let me tell you a couple of things about daistats.com. This was built in my spare time. Now Chris Smith from the Smart Contracts team is adding to this, and it is open, so anybody can submit PRs. But really quick, there is now 7.4 million Dai, which is incredible. And you can see how that is comprised. And we can still add some extra things here, but there is 124K ETH locked. So there is 7 million out of this 7.4. 7.1 is generated from the ETH that is locked up. 270,000 Dai is generated from BAT. So from almost 3 million BAT, they're backing to 270,000 Dai. You can see the debt ceilings. So 50 million for ETH, 3 million for BAT. And this third column, this one is the Psi ceiling. This is the special collateral that the system uses to migrate Psi into Dai and CDPs into vaults. You will see this number, the Psi locked, this number goes up and down all the time. It goes up when people migrate their Psi into Dai. And as soon as it gets enough liquidity, CDP holders can use this Psi locked to close their positions in single collateral Dai and migrate to a MCD vault. You can also see the stability fee, when it was last triggered. This is the ERC20 Dai supply, which is different from the total Dai, and I'm not going to get into that here. But the circulating ERC20 Dai is 6.7 million, and this is the amount of Dai in the SDR. So this is the amount of Dai that is earning a savings rate 2%. And just a couple of other things, like this is the system surplus. So this is what's been paid in stability fees so far. This is the debt, so the bad debt 23, that's not so bad. There has been 1 liquidation for a bad vault and 9, possibly 9 for an ETH vault. Lots of vaults opened. This is the MKR that's been burned. And this is the liquidity in Uniswap. There's 368,000. So please look at this. And if you have any suggestions, or open a pull request, better yet. But these are the numbers 24 hours in, 25. And I'm handing it back to Wouter.
Yes, thank you. I did put a link in the chat to a Twitter thread where I tried to explain very briefly what the difference is between the full Dai balance in the system and the ERC20 token. So if you are interested, then have a look at that. Right. So what we want to talk about now is what I mentioned. It's our belief that multi-collateral Dai really is the next step towards decentralization, and there are some important reasons for that. So the first one we already mentioned. It's the way that the system came into being. So after the system was deployed, we had the community vote, and the risk parameters and collateral that was discussed at length and already ratified through the governance polls. They were put in the spell, or at least the debt ceilings were raised by the spell and activated the system with the risk parameters and collateral that was voted in. Everyone knows that, but there are also 2 things that will happen soon, and the first one is what we call the MIPS process. So that is work in progress. But I want to talk about it very shortly or very briefly here because, I think it will be a crucial tool in decentralizing basically another function in what the MakerDAO's ecosystem needs to do. So we already have our governance facilitation, we have the oracles, we have the risk function, and as we have discussed on previous calls, like we expect that there will be additional functions that will be added to that. And obviously one function that is crucial is the development of new features of the system, and adding those new features to the system through an executive vote. So with the launch of multi-collateral Dai, when we deployed the system, that one is a very big and complex system. So while we have had a lot of community participation, it's to a certain extent it's limited because of the size of what we deployed and launched. Even though we have had votes about many aspects of the system, what we have deployed is so big that we could not have possibly discussed every aspect of the system with the community and have a vote about every detail. It's simply impossible to do. And I want to point attention to the fact that this will now change. The next changes that will be applied to the system, they will be in bits and pieces. So there will be much more opportunity for the community to really discuss the details of the new pieces that we'll be adding in the future. And that's what this MIPS process is all about. So it stands for the Maker Improvement Proposal process. And it's very similar to the Bitcoin improvement proposals and the Ethereum improvement proposals. And those in turn are they are inspired by other development communities, such as the Python community. We won't share the details right now, but we were working on what the process would look like, and it will basically facilitate the discussion with the community and with external parties who will help to bring these features to life. And in that sense, it will be another step towards decentralization and community participation. And then the last one is a very important one that really we didn't give enough attention really, because it's one that we've planned for a long time, but with all the things that we needed to do for MCD launch, this one kind of ended up in the backlog, and it's the planned MKR authority transfer. So for this one, I just want to clarify a little bit how the system was deployed. So the way that it's done is Mariano, as we know, in his underwear, deployed the initial system with all the risk parameters. And the way that smart contracts are deployed, because you need to end up with a permissionless system, is that the deployer first has authority over the system to correctly configure everything. And then you need to transfer permissions to the decentralized governance layer. And for example, we already did that for the oracles, which is a very important one. So the oracles are now fully controlled by the decentralized governance system. So for example, if we need to vote in, or if we need to add additional oracles, then as would be expected, that has to go through a community vote. The next step that we did was the system activation through the community vote. And then the step that we need to do last to finish our deployment really is the infamous MPR authority transfer. And this is a very, very important one. So Mariano will talk a little bit about this in detail. For single collateral Dai, this wasn't necessary. So the foundation multisig actually owns, until this day, the MPR token contract. And yeah, so with multi-collateral Dai, that will change. And Mariano will talk about it. Go ahead, Mariano.
Thank you. And thank you for the reminder of deploying in my underwear. So yeah, as you know, the MKR token, it's a DS token which has an owner and an authority. And right now, there is no authority, and the owner is the Maker Foundation multisig. One of the reasons that this hasn't been changed yet is, like Wouter said, in single collateral Dai, the system MKR was only used for paying stability fees, so there was no minting and burning. That happened at the pooled ether level. But now that multi-collateral Dai is out, if we were to have a debt auction, that debt auction needs to mint MKR. And since this was such a big undertaking, we decided that, okay, let's do this on a second step. That's why we're talking about this now. And the risk parameters, they allow us to pretty much not have to worry that there's going to be any debt auctions right now. But yeah, if you know how the system works, debt auctions can mint MKR to make the system solvent again if you know the debts hits a threshold. If a vault is liquidated and there's not enough collateral after the collateral auction to repay that Dai, then a debt auction kicks in and you have to mint MKR. So I'm going to talk really quick about the proposed plan to fix this. And the plan is like this. We're going to deploy, the smart contracts team is going to deploy an MKR authority. And that is going to be controlled by MKR governance. So the governance that you know and vote on every day, those contracts, they are going to control the authority. And that authority is going to authorize the flopper, which is the debt auction contract, to mint MKR. One of the things that is also going to happen with this MKR authority, so a side effect, is that anybody will be able to call the burn function on their own balance. So this is not unlike transfer, where you can transfer your MKR to somebody else. You are also going to be able to call burn on your balance. And what this is going to allow us is that all of the MKR that is currently in the gempit, which is all the MKR that was paid for stability fees in single collateral Dai, that will finally be able to be burned. And right now there's around over 5K MKR. We will finally see the total supply go down from 1 million to whatever number is after burning. So what else? Yeah. Really what needs to happen in this case is for the multisig to authorize this new authority on the MKR token. And once that happens, it's going to be both the Maker Foundation multisig and MKR governance that will be in control of the MKR token. And then hopefully the idea is to wait a week after this, and then the multisig deauthorizing itself from the MKR token, such that it's going to be 100% controlled by MKR governance and nobody else. As you can see, I'm sweating a little bit just talking about this because it is also a big undertaking that needs to be tested and verified that everything works correctly. That's why we intend to do it like this. And we are going to discuss this a little bit more on Thursday. But I know you all like charts, so this is what we expect it to be next. The MKR token is going to be owned by the multisig and authorized on the authority, which is owned by MKR governance, which is the chief contract that you know and love. And once that happens, the debt auction, if one should occur, can mint new MKR. And also the MKR in the gem pit can be burned.
So Mariano, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So like hypothetically, if a debt auction is triggered right now, what happens?
Right now, you can trigger one, but you cannot actually execute one because mint would fail.
So basically, the system debt would just continue to pile on and like have these empty debt auctions.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So that is
we
also
don't...
why you can see that the system debt is 23 Dai, and that is not even close enough to be able to generate a debt
the threshold
auction.
is 50,000, I believe, right?
I think so, yes.
But keep in mind, there's 4,000 in surplus.
Yeah.
If you heal, exactly.
So we don't expect any flopper auction to kick off anytime soon, but obviously we need to finish this last step so that once we are at the point where flopper auctions might happen, that they can correctly finish and also mint the MPR that they're putting in the auction. Any other questions? As we mentioned, so this is what we're currently working on. We will be discussing this again in the governance call on Thursday. We will also open a forum thread so that we can discuss it there with the community, because this is quite an important moment. And yeah, if you do have any questions after this call, then you can put them in that thread. The execution of this we expect to happen shortly after the governance call on Thursday, but we want to make sure that everything is checked and double checked before we execute something as crucial as this operation.
Cool. And with that, I'm gonna stop presenting.
Yeah, there is a question whether we have any comments on the Twitter thread about the FinCEN symposium. That one we are not going to comment on because you got the wrong people on the call. As the dev team, we prefer to leave these things to our legal advisors. I did hear that they're not concerned about it, but I won't be the one to go into detail about that.
Right on. Yeah, so if there's no other questions, then for the other half of the call, we're going to launch into our usual programming. And I'm going to share a bit about all the stuff that's going on, but I'll give it another 10 seconds or so if anybody has any questions. And
Oh,
feel
we
free
should
to always
also
hop on the
point
mic.
out.
Yeah.
We should point out the, but you already know it by now, but the great site to die.xyz website.
Oh, yeah. While we were waiting for you, I was actually sharing that screen. Sorry, Mariano. I should have been sharing Dai stats.
And did I see it correctly that we actually have one of the authors on the call, or no?
Dave. Yeah, Dave is in here. Dave Crage.
No, also Simone. I saw him joining.
You worked on that.
Yeah.
That is great work.
Yes, we are here. We are here, Mariano.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, how crazy is it that another Conti worked on this, huh? There's a Conti behind Dai stats and a Conti behind site.
I can confirm that it's not my uncle.
Ha.
This is such a great contribution. I'm refreshing the page like every 2 seconds.
It does it by itself, Wouter.
Yes, but not every 2 seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you have any feedback, please.
Oh, actually, while you guys are on the call, what are some of the things that you guys are going to be adding? Because I know that what's his name, Emilio? I don't know how to say his name, but he hinted to me that stuff is going to be added.
Yes, we are going to add the last transactions of migration. I think it could be useful for users to see the last transactions.
Nice. Yeah, nice. That would be useful. Yeah, and all right, and if people have any feedback for you guys, I know your Twitter handles are there in the footer of the website. So anybody watching that wants to give some feedback on the site or request a feature, definitely hit up that team. All right, cool. So I'm going to launch into some of the other stuff that's going on. So created the agenda. You could follow along. Everything that I'm going to talk about is linked here in this doc. And so without further ado, what's going on in governance right now? So yesterday we had a governance poll on the single collateral Dai system go out. It's our regularly scheduled weekly stability fee adjustment poll, and it runs for 3 days. It's running from yesterday, November 18th, through to November 21st at 5 p.m. UTC. So right before the governance call, it ends. Maker token holders are able to vote for the stability fee to be between a range of 1% and 9%. And so this will inform an executive vote that will go out on Friday if people vote for something other than the current stability fee, which it looks like there's options in both directions being voted on, which is really interesting. I'm curious to hear people's reasons for voting one way or the other. But regardless, moving forward, there's no new executive vote for a stability fee adjustment this week. There's actually no executive vote going on right now, just the MCD launch one. That is the current governing proposal. The summary for Thursday's risk and governance call, actually, I should delink that because I did not finish it in the wake of like this really crazy weekend, but it should be up in the next day, probably by the end of today. It should be up. So you can check out the summary on last week's Thursday risk and governance call. You can also see the audio and the video recordings. They're up on SoundCloud and YouTube respectively. So check that out if you want to see last week. We have our governance at a glance thread, which is regularly updated by our community rockstar Along for Wisdom. It's a really great place to get like a quick snapshot of the conversations that are going on in our thread around governance. I also highlighted a few of the most recent interesting threads that I'll share in a sec. There's a new forum navigation index. It's meant to make things more discoverable, we could put things in buckets and we could see basically threads that belong to various categories of things like migration, risk, etc., etc. So it's a really cool thread that Long for Wisdom spun up. Definitely recommend checking it out. And so the two threads that have been a topic of conversation are Cyrus's threads on auction parameter derivations and then also the system parameter derivations. So we talked about auction parameters on the governance call a week and a half ago or two weeks ago, basically. And then Cyrus talked about the system parameters for MCD launch on last week's governance call. And there's associated threads for both to talk about what the parameters are, how they work, and then some of our reasoning behind, or the risk team's reasoning behind how they were set up for multi-collateral Dai. And then the very last thing that I added into this governance section is the migration risk construct proposal, which if you read through it at the very bottom, it has all of the launch parameters there. And I think I linked to the actual proposal, so I think there actually might be auction parameters missing. There's like, I think one parameter that was accidentally missed that's covered in the forum thread, so maybe I should change that link after the call. All right, cool. Yeah, that's pretty much it for governance. We're gonna see a really interesting call this coming Thursday, and yeah, just stay tuned if you're an MKR token holder. And by the way, feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, point things out. Totally happy to be interrupted. And so for partnership integrations and grants, so as you guys know, MCD launched, and with that, we saw a whole slew of support blog posts from a ton of like the most popular people that support Dai, and so obviously they are all supporting MCD now, and many of them, I'm not going to list out all the names, but like maybe the more interesting ones are like InstaDApp. They created a tool for migrating compound users and whale CDPs, and then a bunch of the others are kind of standard. We're supporting MCD, and this is what you can expect from us. And everybody has a bit of a nuanced, different way of approaching it. So if you use any of these platforms, products, apps, try to find out specifically what they're doing to support the multi-collateral Dai or much cooler Dai upgrade. And so, yeah. From the Maker blog, we had a really active week. So we actually put out a ton of really cool stuff. We put out, firstly, that the votes are in. MCD is approved. I think this happened on Saturday. So maybe I'm wrong. But, the vote came out on Friday, and very, very shortly after, it was approved. Which I'll talk about a little later, but we even saw A16Z hop in on that executive vote, which was really great. Hey, Emiliano, how's it going? So Emiliano is also one of the guys behind side2die.xyz.
Hi guys.
Hey, we were just talking about side2die.xyz a little while ago, but right now I'm running through all of the stuff that's been going on this week.
Yeah.
We just covered governance, covered a bit about all the partners and integrators that are supporting MCD, and I have a ton of those blog posts linked in the agenda. So if you guys want, I see a bunch of new people join the call. So if you guys want links to anything I'm talking about, check out the agenda, and you guys could get to it yourselves. And so from the Maker blog, yeah, so we had a blog post about the votes being in. There was another blog post about the Oasis relaunch. So yes, multi-collateral Dai, much cooler Dai launched, but also Oasis relaunched. And it's a suite of 3 primary apps. It's oasis.app/trade, oasis.app/borrow, and oasis.app/save. Yeah. So for trade, it's basically the old Oasis like DEX. For borrow, it's a brand new vault portal that you could use to interact with much cooler Dai. And then save is actually the app for interacting with DSR. So now if you're a Dai holder, you have access to a really, really cool, basically decentralized savings account that gives you currently 2% a year with no liquidity constraints, no withdrawal or deposit constraints, and it's It's really freaking cool. But anyway, Oasis relaunch, you could interact with the Maker protocol through those 3 domains or URLs or whatever. And so you could read through the blog post a bit about that. We also launched a blog post on currency reimagined for the world, talking about multi-collateral Dai and some of its benefits that were actually covered at the beginning of this call. We also launched a lot of blog posts this week. We also launched the blog post on creating the brand identity for the world's first unbiased currency, Dai. So it goes into a bit about our product team's rebranding of Dai. Basically, you saw the new logo. We're seeing a lot of word changes, and like it's really interesting. I suggest reading it. Clearly, I haven't because I just have not had a second, but I am going to read it. And then the last couple of blog posts from that happened this week were why the Dai savings rate is a game changer for the DeFi ecosystem and beyond, which speaks for itself. And then the other one was the single collateral Dai to multi-collateral Dai upgrade timeline and actions. So this one is actually really important. I highly suggest if you are a CDP holder to take a look at that. It has some of the dates that some of these exchanges are going to be converting their user deposits from Sai over to Dai, which is going to give a lot of liquidity in the migration contract, which is going to enable a lot of CDPs to move over that haven't yet. So check out that blog post. It has a really cool table of dates, users and partners, and then the actions that they're going to take. So yeah, check it out. And then some other cool stuff that's not from the Maker blog, but that is from the foundation. We actually came out with a new documentation portal called docs.makerdao.com. It is really awesome. Highly suggest checking it out. And then on a lower level, on a lower level. So the docs.makerdao.com goes into all the technical documentation behind the Maker protocol. It has diagrams of the system. It goes into every single smart contract. It has like failure modes, gotchas, like everything you can want. It's there, and I think it's constantly being improved by some of the people at the foundation, like Charles and Kenton and those guys. So besides docs.makerdao.com, we also launched a revamp of Awesome MakerDAO, which has been a really great community project, a community-run project. We've had over, I think, 36 contributors over the life of this repository, and it is filled with like really great stuff. And actually, Andrew Bourbon is on the call. He's probably the main contributor to the most recent revamp, which is like a total reorganization of this thing. So definitely check out Awesome MakerDAO. And if you have friends that are interested in learning about Maker, there's something in there for everybody, from the very most beginner people to like people that want like hardcore, in-depth analysis pieces and want to read about those. And yeah, it's still in progress, and actually, it's a living repository. And we welcome anybody to come submit PRs to it. And there's definitely improvements because like things like docs.makerdao.com are still not there. And that pull request is definitely going to happen today. So yeah, and then besides Awesome MakerDAO, we also released a partial like set of FAQs for MCD. So there's I think 12 different FAQs pertaining to a whole bunch of different parts of the system, like emergency shutdown, Dai, vaults, stability fees, liquidation, etc., etc. And so we released 7, and one of those is a glossary for all of the like conceptual terms of the Maker protocol, along with their definitions. So if you go on our website, makerdao.com, and you click on the little Learn tab up top and you click FAQs, it's going to link you to the awesome MakerDAO section on FAQs, which has the multi-collateral Dai FAQs, and then right next to it, the analog single collateral Dai FAQs if you want the FAQs for the old system. So, and the remaining 5 FAQs, I think it is, are going to be released in the coming couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. All right, cool. So some highlights from the community. we have Maker is actually in the Earn Crypto section of loanscan.io now, which I find really awesome, thanks to DSR. We also saw, Mariano Conti talked about this a little bit, but Andrew Redden launched MCD with a transaction that cost him $1.67. Which was funny because I know in our Zoom call where we were all hanging out during the launch, a few people were trying to compete to get that, but Andrew took the cake. As I mentioned earlier, A16Z voted on the executive. A16Z voted on the executive for MCD. That was really cool. I linked to the tweet and to like the direct post that they put out. They voted with, I think, 1,000 MKR. And then, so moving forward, I saw this this really interesting conference call that's going to be happening in a couple of days, actually right after the Thursday governance and risk call. It's going to be kind of like a panel fireside chat type thing with a bunch of really interesting people. There's going to be our very own Stephen Becker, who's our president and CEO at the foundation. Robert Leshner is going to be there, who's the founder and CEO of Compound. Tim I don't know how to pronounce his name. Ogilvy? Yeah. He's the co-founder and CEO of Staked. He's going to be there, and Allison Liu, who's actually been on the call a few weeks ago, who's the co-founder and COO of UMA. They're all going to be talking about the massive potential of multi-collateral Dai and whatever else they talk about. But there's definitely a lot of interesting conversation to be had between those four. So yeah, definitely sign up for that conference call. The link is in the agenda if you're interested. And then, oh yeah, and I already mentioned this. Also, MakerDAO received the revamp. Not going to go into that again, since I already went into it. And then for developer creations out of the community, the first one was Dai Stats. Since it was done in Mariano's free time, I count that as community work, not foundation work. But that's just semantics. Who knows? But yeah, DaiStats.com got updated to reflect the new multi-collateral Dai launch. Sci2Dai.xyz, which is just really freaking cool. It's a really nice way to just keep track of the migration as it's happening by just looking at the total supply of Psi against the total supply of Dai. And we also saw from our community this thing called Dai-HRD. It's another Dai token, and it's actually, I think, tokenized DSR. But of course, it's definitely check it out before using it. Do your own research and all that. But nevertheless, a really cool developer creation that came out of our community. Articles and notable threads.
David, maybe I should chime in about next week now.
Give me a second. After I cover the remainder of what's on the agenda for community, we could tell people what you're gonna be presenting next week. Yeah. So just give me a sec. Yeah. So for articles and notable threads, we actually didn't look too deeply into those two categories this week, just because we had so much other stuff. But we saw Reuters come out with a article about crypto backed by crypto. Dai seeks to change the stablecoin game. This article came out like right at the same time as launch, which was really cool. And we saw a really great video that was a Twitter exclusive from Chris Bleck about how to upgrade Psi to Dai, which was a nice, short, sweet video for the community. And so that's it. Yeah, that's all I had on the agenda for highlights from the community. And so next week we're gonna be having Akiva Dubrovsky. So you want to take a couple minutes to talk about what you're gonna present next week?
Yeah, so I'm presenting a DSR hedging platform. So people can take CDPs and lock in their DSR interest rate. They can also take Dai and lock in their DSR they're earning on it. And it's useful for people who want to protect themselves from fluctuations in the DSR. Just like there's been fluctuations in the stability fee, there's probably going to be a lot of volatility in the DSR. So if you're interested, stay tuned for next week.
Yeah, in general, like FRAs in traditional finance are a big thing and an important thing that's going to happen in our space. Fixed rates are definitely useful to users all around, and so I'm excited to see what you have cooking up, Akiva. Yeah, right on. So, and then the last little section before we end the call, we have about 5 minutes left. And Akiva, I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna mute you because I'm getting a bit of feedback from you. All right, cool. Yeah. So, and then the very last section in the last couple of minutes of the call is just some of the events that are going on over the next 7 days. We got one in Finland, in Helsinki. Our very own Petru Katana from the integrations team is going to be talking at Slush. It's the Nordic Blockchain and DeFi Evening. A lot of people love Slush. It's certainly a cool name for a conference. Also on the 21st, online, I already mentioned this, but there's going to be a call, and Steven is going to be talking on it. And then on the 25th, we have a meetup organized by Bocconi Blockchain Association in Milano, Italy, and our very own Maria from the community management team is going to be there representing. On the 26th, Yasahi DeFi in Tokyo, Japan. We're going to have our community manager Kathleen over there representing. And then lastly, in Zurich, we have a Mama meetup, which Petru is going to be at. I wonder what Mama stands for. It stands for Mama at, yeah, I don't know, but I have no idea. What does it stand for? Yeah, who knows? Oh, Multi-Chain Asset Managers Association, of course.
Yes, sorry, I was new. Yeah,
Could've-
it's a
could've-
kind of a legal like association with which we are involved as well with the ATIC, our legal department.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, so those are some of the events that are going on this week. And yeah, that's it. We're coming up at the top of the hour, so we got a few more minutes. If you guys have any questions or things you want to talk about, feel free to like voice, if you have a mic, voice if you want to chat, throw it in the chat. But otherwise, thank you guys for another awesome community call. And this recording is going to be up in an hour or so. And yeah, cool.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much for being on the call, man. And thanks for the site to die.xyz. It's one of my favorite pages to refresh every 2 seconds.
Yeah, let's continue to make progress on it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.